in a moment and the rare opportunity for me to say I told you so about something legal, but first it is becoming increasingly obvious that Trump and the authoritarians seeking to overthrow democracy in the United States and install him as a dictator for life and then enact the equivalent of ethnic cleansing have made the choice to let everybody know in advance that they are seeking to overthrow the democracy in the United States and install him as a dictator and then enact the equivalent of ethnic cleansing. You may recall Trump summoning most of the fossil fuel industry of this nation to Mar-a-Lago in April and essentially demanding that they put $1 billion into his campaign so that he can get elected and then eliminate virtually all of the restrictions on their businesses as they try to destroy the planet faster. Now, the Washington Post reports that early this month, he summoned most of the big money non-gas donors to the Republicans and other fascists to the Pierre Hotel here in New York, around the corner from me, and there was essentially demanding that they increase their donations by a factor of 25 or 50 times so he can eliminate virtually all taxes on their businesses and their personal incomes. One businessman, Trump told them, had offered him a donation of $1 million in exchange for lunch. The Post sources quoted Trump as replying, "I'm not having lunch. You've got to make it $25 million. Then there was the other would-be donor who normally gave $2 to $3 million. Quote, he told the donor that he wanted a $25 million or $50 million contribution or he would not be, quote, very happy. Quote, the tax cuts all expire for wealthy and poor and middle income and everybody else, he told the coven at the Pierre, according to the Washington Post. But they expire in another 7 months, and Biden's not going to renew them, which means taxes are going to go up by 4 times. You're going to have the biggest tax increase in history. It's blackmail. Give me the money I want, 25 times or 50 times as much as you plan to give me, or else. Is this legal? Of course it's not legal. What does legal mean to Trump at this point? If he loses the election, he might as well enact the original outcome to the novel on which House of Cards was based and go up to the roof somewhere and light himself on fire and jump off. The Washington Post quoted campaign finance lawyers who say Trump was technically allowed to ask these donors for contributions of $3,300 or less. Well, he's close, only $50 million. The quid pro quo is in Trump's blood. It's why he's on trial. It is the through line of his relationship with Michael Cohen and Stormy Daniels. It's why he was impeached over Ukraine. It was the premise of January 6th. It is why he is running a pre-sale on the environment for $1 billion. It is why he will sell you lower taxes for $50 million a plate. It's why, of course, he doesn't care if anybody knows. Because if it works, exactly who is going to prosecute him for blackmail and corruption and quid pro quos? And if it doesn't work, there are a whole lot of buildings he can jump off, many of which have his own name on them. If this unvarnished, unrestrained, undeniable corruption were not obvious enough, if it were not obvious enough that Trump just doesn't give a shit anymore, you're not going to shame him, you're not going to restrain him, you're not going to prosecute him. He's decided it's us or him. There's the second part to this. Trump reposted or posted a video, another one of these fig leaf deniable Reich videos. He didn't make the video. He just posted the video. In it, a man encounters at a New York, apparently, airport, Joe Scarborough. He rolls his phone camera and he starts swearing at Joe Scarborough for 23 seconds, complete with a bad New York accent. Now, look, who am I to judge? We've all done this. And Scarborough tried to mainstream Trump, and he coached Trump before the debates in 2016, and he only stopped and suddenly found God when Trump did not pick him to be his vice president, or Scarborough would be out there at the trial supporting Trump. And Scarborough thus long ago forfeited the usual rules about deserving that minimal level of decorum in public. So he got screamed at with swear words for 23 seconds by this guy. And by the way, the assumption is it's a guy. But to me, go listen to the tape. You judge for yourself. To me, it sounded like Judge Jeanine Pirro from Fox. But who knows? And swearing at Scarborough? But the lunatic then branched out, and this is the point. Quoting and mildly correcting, quote, he'll get rid of all you effing liberals. You liberals are gone when he effing wins. You effing blowjob liberals are done. Uncle Donnie's gonna take this election. Landslide, you effing half a blowjob. Landslide, get the F out of here, you scumbag. Unquote. Watch that guy wind up as Secretary of State. The point, of course, is that Trump posted that video. And he can come up with any excuse he wants. Oh, I thought it was funny. Oh, it's just criticism of Joe Scarborough. Oh, I didn't look at it as that way. I didn't make that video. He is as responsible for that as if somebody verbally assaulted, I don't know, Jesse Waters in a video. Does Jesse Waters recognize his own name if it's yelled at on the streets? He yells at Jesse Waters in a video, promises Biden is going to purge Jesse Waters and his family and his supporters, and then Biden posted the video on his accounts on social media. It is the most rapidly, efficiently worn out cliche of our century. But truly, what would be happening right now if Joe Biden had posted some kind of video like the Trump Scarborough video? If that had happened, the New York Times headquarters would be the first building in human history to faint from the vapors. And obviously, Biden would not post that hypothetical video because his campaign is not an ever-increasingly criminal plot to extort money from donors and peddle all the influence he has and trade tax cuts for political contributions and sell the right to destroy the planet to oil executives who apparently get some kind of bonus if they kill all of us by the year 2030 instead of merely the year 2035. I have been arguing since the year 2016 that the essence of the Trump campaign, the Trump zeitgeist, the essence of Trump has been Hitlerian. Not that he would take the oath of office and then open concentration camps a half an hour later. Not that I was comparing him to Hitler 1942. But that the point of Trump is to help one part of the country, metaphorically or literally, kill the other half of the country. When you say, as Trump has said, the immigrants are poisoning the blood of the nation. When you say, as Trump has said, his enemies are vermin, and you will remove them, and you will use the military, and you will also immunize the cops. So guess what? Then you could use the cops too, and you will do it quickly, first thing, and you will decide who is an immigrant. Guess what? What you are building to is an ethnic cleansing of the United States of America. Only the ethnic definitions are kind of fluid. Step one, purge all the immigrants. Step two, declare that all of your political opponents are immigrants. It's just a word. You could purge, I don't know, people who look like Swiss cheese, and then declare that all of your political opponents look like Swiss cheese. The only thing new about this is that most of Trump's predecessors on this list, Hitler, Mussolini, Mao, Pol Pot, they tried to fool some of the people some of the time before revealing their final solutions. Trump is not only revealing it, he's not only posting it in videos that mock Joe Scarborough. He's not only doing that, but if you give him $1 billion, he'll say, would you like to have naming rights to the final solution? Okay, final statements at the trial. And ironically, as an aside, reading of Trump threatening donors at the Pierre Hotel, which I walk past every day. I once had an hour-long staring contest with Bill O'Reilly at a charity event inside the Pierre Hotel. Reading of him there, reading of him at Mar-a-Lago offering to sell all the remaining oxygen for $1 billion. I think less of Hitler and Pol Pot and those, and more of the movie The Untouchables and the Al Capone baseball bat scene, where Capone, in formal attire, is meeting with his henchmen at a formal dinner and talking about enthusiasms like baseball and good teamwork like in baseball. And the next thing you know, he's beating in the skull of the character played by John Brockie with a baseball bat. And oh yeah, who is it that Trump keeps referencing when he boasts about how often he's been indicted? Al Capone. And who is it again who plays Al Capone in the movie The Untouchables? That's right, Robert DeNiro, who went to the courthouse yesterday and spoke out vividly against Trump on Biden's behalf, on America's behalf, on freedom's behalf, and broke all the Republicans. They declared he was washed up, despite the Oscar nomination this year. Because the other key to enabling Trump's ethnic, more or less, cleansing of this country is to insist that everybody but you and Trump are doing it. On Fox yesterday, after De Niro swore at Trump and MAGA scum in public, Dana Perino, who until the invention of Kayleigh McEnany was easily the dumbest press secretary in White House history, Dana Perino actually said that De Niro had been sent by, quote, the campaign to do a speech across the street from the jury trial. I actually think that they could probably file a lawsuit about that because I think it is against the law, that it's against the rights of the defendant and of the former president, and it's tampering with the jury. Trump bringing the Speaker of the House and half a dozen senators and half a dozen congressmen into the courthouse, not across the street, but into the courthouse, several at a time, every day of the trial. That's fine. Robert De Niro holding a news conference outside, that's against the law. Because simpletons like Dana Perino really think like that. And it's not complicated why they think like that. They are right. Therefore, the laws are there to protect them and to punish you. Doesn't matter if it's, going around a formal dining room with a baseball bat. Legal if it's Republicans, not legal if it's Democrats. More or less at the same hour that Dana Perino was saying that, and think about how many things she clearly doesn't understand about the United States of America. More or less at that same hour, Hogan Gidley, the Trump spokesman who either has a really bad wig that he bought at Woolworth's or was never taught by his dad how to comb his real hair, Hogan Gidley was on CNN upbraiding Jake Tapper because Jake Tapper had noted that Judge Eileen Cannon was appointed by Trump But he did not also note that Judge Juan Merchan once donated to the Biden campaign. And to his credit, Tapper replied, yeah, I think he gave like $35 to get a T-shirt for his daughter. And Hogan Gidley smiled with great satisfaction. Because this is how they think. One judge, corrupt, clearly stalling so much she may actually have stalled too much and may get herself removed from that trial, probably not in time, but she may get herself removed from that trial and sanctioned by the judges above her, was appointed by Trump, and the other judge once donated $35. That's the same thing to them because it is illegal to oppose Trump. It is illegal to contradict Trump. It is illegal to work against Trump. And if it isn't, it will be. That's the idea. I said this part was about the trial itself. With juries, who knows? But I will point out that on May 14th, I noted the defense's self-congratulatory insistence that they had blown up Michael Cohen because they insisted a critical call from Cohen to the phone of Trump bouncer Keith Schiller on October 24, 2016, could not have included questions about harassing calls and the latest on the payments to Stormy Daniels. That the call was less than 2 minutes, that Cohen could not have talked about two different things to Schiller and to Trump in just that span of time. I noted that day, the last part is nonsense. I once fired my business manager and my agent in one phone call. They were both on. That, including the pleasantries, lasted 36 seconds. So sure enough, what does prosecutor Joshua Steinglass do in his closing argument to the jury yesterday? Per the New York Times, Steinglass just started a timer and pretended to have the exact same conversation, adding plenty of asides and silences as he played the role of Cohen, talking first to Schiller and then to Trump. The call felt as if it lasted a long time, but when Steinglass stopped the timer, it had only been about 49 seconds, about as long as the call in question. The point he was seeking to illustrate was simple, that Cohen could have easily talked to both men, just like he testified. This was a real piece of showmanship, clever and useful at the same time. Moments like these show Steinglass's experience as a longtime trial lawyer who can lean into the innate theatricality of the role. Jonah Bromwich, New York Times. Told you so. I have no idea what the jury will do. I know one of Trump's old attorneys was on TV and rolled his eyes at much of the Trump closing arguments. I know Trump's lawyer violated all the rules of the court and told the jury it could not send Trump to jail on Cohen's testimony when this is not the jury that would decide if he goes to jail. The judge insisted that the lawyer did that deliberately. I don't know how you unhear that. You can't declare a mistrial in favor of the prosecution. And I do know lawyers keep pointing out the crux of this, that Trump confessed elsewhere to paying Cohen to pay Daniels. And I also know that if I were Bob De Niro and I was going to speak outside the Trump courthouse about scum like Trump, I would have talked more about enthusiasms, and I would have brought my baseball bat with me. Coffee? Last point. Sometimes I think the New York Times and Politico collude. I think they alternate in covering the campaign. Well, you guys are going to insist Biden can't win? Okay. We'll write something good saying he could win. Oh, wait, no. You changed it? You're going to write something good? Okay, then we'll write something bad. Times yesterday headline. Trump leans into an outlaw image as his criminal trial concludes. Preparing for a potential verdict in Manhattan, the former president has increasingly aligned himself with fellow defendants and people convicted of crimes. By this logic, whenever Trump eventually dies, the Times could run a headline saying, Trump leans into a dead image as his life concludes. explains it'll be easier for him to get around because he's lost so much weight. So that was the Times outlaw image. Who? No rules, just Trump. Politico yesterday, their headline, a full-blown freakout over Biden. I'll read this. A pervasive sense of fear has settled in at the highest levels of the Democratic Party over Joe Biden's re-election prospects, even among office holders and strategists who had previously expressed confidence about the coming battle with Donald Trump. A few choice quotes. A Democratic operative. This isn't, oh my God, Mitt Romney might become president. It's, oh my God, the democracy might end. There's still a path to win this, but they don't look like a campaign that's embarking on that path right now, said Pete Giangreco, a longtime Democratic strategist who's worked on blah, 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 blah. New York Democrats need to wake up, said Manhattan Borough President Mark Levine. The number of people in New York, including people of color that I come across, who are saying positive things about Trump is alarming. So there are the negatives. This followed last Friday, the Friday of Memorial Day weekend, when nobody is reading the holy goddamn New York Times, the holy goddamnedest New York Times story I think I have ever read. The polls, they wrote last Friday, I doubt you saw it, have shown Trump with an edge for 8 straight months. But there's one big flashing warning sign suggesting that his advantage might not be quite as stable as it looks. By the way, that's as stable as the Times has made it look, while everybody else has said, it's not stable. That warning sign, the Times went on, his narrow lead is built on gains among voters who aren't paying close attention to politics, who don't follow traditional news, and who don't regularly vote. Who don't regularly vote? So he'll win the votes of everybody who doesn't vote? Go on. To the extent that has not been true in the New York Times Siena College polling in the last 8 years, disengaged voters are driving the overall polling results and the storyline about the election. President Biden has actually led the last 3 Times Siena national polls among those who voted in the 2020 election, even as he has trailed among registered voters overall. And looking back over the last few years, almost all of Mr. Trump's gains have come from these less engaged voters. So all of your polls this last year, Times, have been predicated on the opinions and promises and plans of voters who do not vote. I understand voters who do not vote might suddenly vote. Gotcha. Seems, though, that you might have wanted to have mentioned this a little earlier. Just saying. In our polling, Mr. Biden wins just 3/4 of Democratic-leaning voters who didn't vote in the 2022 midterm election, even as almost all high-turnout Democratic leaners continue to support him. While the race has been stable so far, Mr. Trump's dependence on disengaged voters makes it easy to imagine how it could quickly become more volatile. As voters tune in over the next 6 months, there's a chance that disengaged but traditionally Democratic voters could revert to their usual partisan leanings. Alternately, many of these disaffected voters might ultimately stay home, which might help Mr. Biden. The Times' latest excuse for a year of polls that have put a huge thumb on the polling picture, on the entire coverage of the campaign, on Democrats who have panicked and said, get rid of Joe Biden. The latest Times excuse for its intolerable, indefensible journalistic malpractice is Biden has not been reaching the non-voters who are non-politically plugged in and are non-readers as well. One important factor might be the media consumption. While Mr. Biden holds nearly all of his support from voters who consume traditional mainstream media, national newspapers, television networks, and the like, the disengaged are far likelier to report getting their news from social media. 2 things here. If national newspapers have no sway on this election, why are we bothering to read their polls? Why are we bothering to believe their polls? Why are we not questioning the methodology of their polls? And the other thing, if there's one thing we know for certain about social media, is that it's volatile. And its influences are for sale by the carload lot. If this really is the crux of the problem, flood TikTok, flood Insta, get on all of them with Biden influencers. How much do you think $1 million will get you on TikTok? And here's one idea. Minute-long clips, news from the future, showing Trump jailing kids who are protesting, showing Trump instituting a draft, showing all flights being canceled because of climate change, because Trump sold all the oxygen after he got reelected. Paint in broad strokes. In other words, if this is really about people who are influenced by social media, largely younger people or even older people, scare the crap out of them. And if that fails, just run a lot of clips of DeNiro with the baseball bat. No one wants coffee after that? Also of interest here, who wants to be a millionaire? Jesus does. A right-wing pastor insists greed is good because Jesus was a trust fund baby who was given $1 million at birth. And no, I'm not kidding. Hallelujah, hallelujah. I wonder if Jesus invested in Bitcoin. That's next. This is Countdown.
This is Countdown with Keith Olbermann.
Still ahead of us on this almost all-new edition of Countdown, there are football fans, and then there are football fans who thought about failing everybody in the Ivy League history class they taught as revenge against the universe because their team blew a game on a terrible, stupid, last-second mistake. And of course, I was in his class. And I loved him still. Next, in Things I Promised Not to Tell, but first as ever, there are still more new idiots to talk about. The daily roundup of the miscreants, morons, and Dunning-Kruger effect specimens who constitute today's worst persons in the world. LeBron's worst, Senator Lindsey Graham. We have all watched as Graham has turned from an occasionally surprisingly responsible Republican into a bloated, psychotic, hallucinating apologist for Trump who looks like he's being blackmailed with something really, really bad. And he has late-stage PTSD, and he looks like he might take hostages at any moment. On the other hand, Lindsey Graham got a lot of grief, undeserved, I think, for something he said recently on Fox. He was schmoozing the idiots on the Fox Morning Show couch, where you go to sit on your brains, and he was reassuring the challenged hosts that no, they were not propagandizing for fascism, they were standing up for freedom. The bottom line is, Graham drawled, conservatives are tolerant. We are kind of get out of your business. You leave me alone, I'll leave you alone. Needless to say, this has been met with guffaws. Except I think it was met with guffaws because people thought when Lindsey Graham said tolerant, they thought he meant human tolerance, like letting people believe what they want to believe, letting women vote, letting minorities vote, letting Democrats vote, not trying to destroy the Capitol because they lost an election and they cannot deal with it. No, of course he didn't mean that kind of tolerant. Lindsey Graham said exactly, literally what he meant. Let me read you that quote again. Conservatives are tolerant. We are kind of get out of your business. Take him literally here. Of course conservatives are tolerant about your business. I mean, he just said your business. Business. They are get out of your business, conservatives, especially If your business wants to cheat on its taxes, or discriminate against gays, or pay off porn stars before an election, or hire 8-year-olds to clean dangerous machinery, or contribute billions of dollars to overthrowing democracy. That's what Lindsey Graham meant by tolerant. Literally, get out of my business. The runners-up, Congress. Here is an enigma. A year ago last March, the House of Representatives passed a spending bill that included, required, mandated the construction, creation, and installation of a plaque listing the names of the officers who served at the Capitol on January 6th, ordering that it be installed when ready on the western front of our Capitol. And 14 months later, nothing. All quiet on the western front of our Capitol. No plaque. And Representative Zoe Lofgren's letters to Speaker Mike Johnson about what he did with the plaque have gone unanswered. Well, of course, you don't have to be an expert to figure this one out. The plaque would offend Trump because it would give official sanction to the idea that the police were the good guys on January 6th and Trump's traitors were the bad guys. And Trump can't accept that. So Mike Johnson is slow-walking a plaque that, backs the blue. Because Trump and the Republicans don't back the blue. On the other hand, Monday, Memorial Day, a man named Ben Pollock, the proud father of not one but two insurrectionist bastards who attacked the Capitol and the cops on January 6th, led a convoy that tried to force its way into Arlington National Cemetery on Memorial Day to install there, in the nation's most hallowed ground, a memorial stone reading, "In honor of the ones who lost their lives on Jan 6, 2021, starting with Ashley Babbitt." And then there were 3 other names of insurrectionists or whatever garbage they were. When stopped by authorities, this Yahoo Pollock got out, live streaming this, and he insisted that Ashley Babbitt should be buried there, quote, "right up there with Mr. Lee." And again, the appalling glorification of traitors is one thing. I'm afraid we're sort of used to that. But the continuously amazing part to me is the endless stupidity of these idiots, because while Arlington National Cemetery was once the mansion of Robert E. Lee, traitor, is in fact buried at Washington and Lee University in Lexington, Virginia, where he was president when he died, which they could have Googled. If only they were smart enough to think, I wonder if I might be wrong about something in life. Postscript. Speaking of which, one of the other names printed on that rock, and it's a rock with white paint on it, and names then stenciled on it in black. And it looks like crap. It looks like a large frozen turkey from the A&P. One of the names on there is a woman named Roseanne Boyland, and these geniuses misspelled her name Roseanne. But our winner, Pastor Shane Vaughn. We've visited with Pastor Shane before, courtesy of the fine folks at friendlyatheist.com. Pastor Shane was the one who said he had to be careful. He could not go on his live stream and call Joy Reid of MSNBC a, quote, jungle bunny. And of course, he said those exact words while claiming he was not saying them, because all you need to do is look at this guy and you realize that he has the ethics of the most corrupt insurance agent you've ever met. Pastor Shane has moved on to defending himself after what appears to have been a spate of complaints because he's been caught driving around in a Cadillac. Even his parishioners are wondering why. So Pastor Shane did another stream of some sort and just attacked all his own faithful who think maybe pastors shouldn't be rich.
For some reason, there is this messed up thinking in the minds of people that pastors are to be poor. And I don't know, for example, this vehicle I'm driving right here, people look at it, yes, it's a very expensive vehicle. Very, very. But what you don't know is I didn't buy it. You didn't know that, did you? That's because you got your nose in places you don't even know what you're talking about. This was given to me. You understand that? People don't know those things. It's none of their business. But yes, I drive a Cadillac that I did not buy. You think I'm just going to throw it in the ditch because it was given to me?
So, religious vows of poverty and whatnot? Just nonsense. Utter nonsense, says Pastor Shane. Why, look at Jesus. Jesus is your defense for driving a Cadillac? I can't wait to see how this plays out. Jesus, according to Pastor Shane, was a trust fund baby.
Where do we get this thing from that anybody in the world can be blessed except a pastor? Where did that thinking come from? People say, well, Jesus didn't even have a place to lay his head. You poor, uneducated Bible reader. Go look, I believe in the book of Mark, where it says the total opposite. It says that they were at Jesus' house, his home. He had a home. What do you think Yeshua did with all the money that was brought to him at his birth? Do you know what was brought to him from the kings of the East? Gold, frankincense, myrrh. Do you know how much that was worth in today's dollars? Almost $1 million was given to the baby Jesus. What do you think financed his life? What do you think financed his ministry? Supernatural finances.
Hallelujah, and pass the tax deductions. Supernatural finances. $1 million baby. $1 million Jesus. Hallelujah, $1 million Jesus. Okay, we can make fun of Pastor Shane with the ethics of a corrupt insurance agent, and God knows we will make fun of him. But I do have to offer a little factual analysis of his rationalization. His biblical greed is good because Jesus had $1 million at birth. People who take the Bible seriously but also believe in, historical research have concluded that if you superimpose today's economics on the world of 2,000 years ago, a pound of frankincense would be worth, in today's money, $500. A pound of gold would be worth $600, and a pound of myrrh, $4,000. Hey, forget buying any of that gold. Let's invest in myrrh. In short, it would be as if Putin, King Charles, and Trump gave Jesus 2024 $5,100. Supernatural finances. You betcha. Hallelujah. Pastor Shane Vaughn. Can't add, can't count, can't do math, can't lie well, which is really a problem because he actually is an insurance agent as well. Can I pay you later, Pastor Insurance Agent, when my supernatural finances come through? Today's worst person yeehaw in the world. Where, oh, where are you tonight? Why did you leave me here all alone? I searched the world over and I thought I found true love, but you met another and you was gone. To the number one story on the countdown, and why don't we just make this stuff from my college days week? I know. There's a really good chance you still have not finished yesterday's things I promised not to tell about how I had to take 28 credits, 10 classes in my last semester of college just to graduate on time because Dad wouldn't pay for $1's worth after that one semester. And I had to walk uphill in the snow both ways. Had to take 28 credits in my last semester of college just to graduate on time. And how, because of that, I have endured nearly half a century of dreams about not graduating on time. I know I went on for a bit about this subject, like about half an hour. Sorry. Anyway, this story is 2 semesters before that and much, much shorter. It was the fall of my senior year at Cornell, And it's about a 4-credit course that I nearly failed. In fact, that everybody in the class nearly failed because a quarterback fumbled a football in an NFL game. Seriously. In September 1978, I walked reluctantly but proudly into this one class at Cornell University, and if I remember correctly, to get into 19th century American history with Professor Joel Silby. 8 credits spanning 2 semesters. I had to get special permission from the history department because I was not a history major. I just took all the history classes I could get, even this one, which was really toughly graded, an awful lot of reading, amazing amount of detail, and really good. Not only was Professor Silby really good, but the reading material was outstanding. I took all the Cornell history classes I could get, and this was one of the best ones. And I remember Professor Silby's first lecture and the accent and the mannerisms that quickly identified him not only as a fellow native New Yorker, but as a Brooklynite. And a Brooklynite fan of, as he quickly told us, the New York Football Giants. What Professor Joel Silby said next caused I think it was 200 or so other students in the lecture hall to laugh. All of them except me, because I was the sports director of the Cornell student-owned radio station, and in those days you could actually know everything about and everybody in all the national sports off the top of your head, and usually that meant you could figure out all the teams in all the sports that had the slightest chance of succeeding and all the teams in all the sports that did not, and the New York Football Giants did not. I want you to know I grade the papers, not the teaching assistants, me. And I happen to be a lifelong, therefore long-suffering fan of the New York Football Giants. I saw my first Giants game in 1945, and over the years, I happen to have developed this habit of grading your papers on Sunday afternoons and evenings right after I watch my New York Football Giants. So to some degree, great or small, your grade will depend on how well the New York Football Giants do in this 1978 National Football League season. 199 of Joel Silby's students laughed. I emitted a low moan. Since they had gone to 5 NFL championship games in the 6 seasons ending in 1963 and lost all 5, by the way, the Giants had had exactly 2 winning seasons, and they had lost 9 of 14 games the year before 1977. Though they had opened this 1978 season with a narrow victory over a very bad Tampa Bay team, and the first half of their schedule had as many as 4 more opponents who they might be better than, they would be lucky to win 2 games in the second half of the season. When I got back to the radio station, I looked at the Giants' schedule and Professor Silby's class schedule, and I circled one critical day when the schedules converged. Sunday, November 19th, 1978. Our term papers were due on Thursday the 16th. He could actually read them all after the Giants-Eagles game that night and the following day. Amazingly, your New York Football Giants actually opened the season winning 3 of their first 4. In the middle of October, they were still 5-3, and in the history lecture room, Professor Silby was very happy, and he often recreated highlights of his glorious Giants' pleasing success, and he was furiously fanboying on the new quarterback they'd brought in from the Canadian League, Joe Pisarcik. If you are a football history fan, or God forbid, a fan of the New York Football Giants, you already know where I'm going with this. The Giants lost the next 3 games, and then our term papers were due on November 16th, and Joel Silby turned morose. And I was at the radio station watching the Giants-Eagles game of the 19th on a big black and white TV in the lounge when my nightmare unfolded. Impossibly, the Giants led the much better Philadelphia Eagles 14-0 after the first quarter. Pisarcik threw 2 touchdown passes. After the third quarter, it was still 17-6 Giants. Then the Eagles scored, and they were driving to go ahead with a minute and a half left in the game when the impossible happened. Deep in Giants territory, the Philly quarterback threw an interception. With 83 seconds left and in possession of the ball, the Giants led 17-13. The crowd at the radio station was ecstatic. I was even more ecstatic. All the Giants now had to do was stall, and have the quarterback fall on the ball maybe twice. As if he had heard me, the quarterback, Joe Pisarcik, fell on the ball. Then he nearly killed me by handing the ball off to his running back, Larry Zonka, who plowed up the middle to get a first down and burn another 30 seconds off the clock. The Eagles called their last timeout. 31 seconds left. 31 seconds to my grade in Joel Silby's 19th century American history class, probably ending up being a half or maybe even a full grade better than I deserved. All Joe Pisarcik had to do was fall on the damn ball again, and it was over. However, on the Giants sideline, offensive coordinator Bob Gibson decided that the safe play, the winning play, was for Joe Pisarcik to hand the ball off again to Larry Zonka. Now, that might have been the right play, only Bob Gibson and everybody else failed to tell Larry Zonka. Larry Zonka assumed he was there just to block for Joe Pisarcik as Joe Pisarcik collapsed to the turf and ran out the clock and got me a better grade. Instead, Pisarcik handed the ball to where Zonka's hands should have been, except Larry Zonka was in a blocking stance, and Pisarcik, in fact, handed it off directly to Larry Zonka's helmet. I screamed. The ball bounced once off the turf and directly into the hands of Philadelphia cornerback Herman Edwards. I continued to scream. There was nobody near Edwards, and he scooted 26 yards into the end zone, and the Giants lost the damn game 19-17 in the last seconds. And as the Giants fans at the radio station shouted or moaned or swore, I could see Professor Joel Silby shutting off the TV, grabbing our papers, and sentencing us to hell. And I continued to scream. Our term papers were returned on Tuesday the 21st, just before school broke for Thanksgiving. I actually was thankful. I got either a B or a B+. I can't find the paper. It should be somewhere in a box. There was a rumor, which I was never able to confirm, that my B or B+ was the highest grade in the class. I can confirm I saw classmates, most far more prepared and astute than myself, most of them history majors, looking at their grades and blanching visibly. One girl cried, "A C? Really? A C?" Professor Joel Silby said much of our grade would depend on how well the New York Football Giants did in that 1978 National Football League season, and by God, they had just sustained a loss so bad that it is still talked about to this day. My classmates did not listen. And I only am escaped alone to tell thee. There is a postscript. The postscript takes place 32 1/2 years later. I returned to Cornell in March of 2011 to give a lecture and teach a series of classes to students who no longer afterwards felt they had gotten their full money from the university. My alma mater was very kind to me. They gave me a tour of the secret places they never would have shown me when I was a struggling student, like where they kept Cornell's copy of the Gettysburg Address, and they promised me something special for lunch the first day. And sure enough, I was dropped off at a restaurant, and there, rising from a table to greet me with applause, were Cornell's official historian and former professor Glenn Altshuler, and their very famous history professor Walter Lefebvre, and, I swear, Professor Joel Silby. And they were fans of mine. Of course, I could not leave well enough alone. After a few minutes of very pleasant conversation with Mr. Altshuler and Professor Lefebvre and Professor Silby, I brought up the 1978 term paper Joe Pisarcik handoff story. Professor Lefebvre looked at Professor Silby like Professor Silby was out of his mind. "Is that true?" And Silby smiled and said, "Yes. Yes, it is." And then Joel Silby looked off into the distance, as if he were peering backwards through time. 1978, that's when you could really enjoy being a professor. He then looked back at me and smiled. "Keith, you won't believe this, but I actually graded those papers pretty fairly, and I didn't follow through on my original plan. After the fumble, I actually turned off the TV, and I sat there for a few minutes, and I asked my soul if it was okay for me to take my revenge on the universe by failing all of you." Lefebvre gulped. "Oh," said Silby, "it was so great to be a professor back then." I laughed so much I had tears in my eyes, and then Silby said, Okay, maybe I was a little unfair to you guys, but, it's the Giants. And you have to take this as a whole. The year they won their first Super Bowl, what was that, 86? The final exam in that class was like 2 days after they finished the regular season 14-2, 8 o'clock in the morning. So I go to the final, see, which I never do. And I waited until they were all sitting there sweating. And I said, remember last September when I told you your grade will depend on how well the New York Football Giants do in this 1986 National Football League season? And there was just silence. And I said, well, if you didn't notice, they went 14-2. And I haven't been this happy since when they won the title in 1956. So guess what? There's no final exam. And nobody moved. So I said it again. There's no final exam. Go home. Go study for something else. You all get A's. And then there was a couple of seconds of silence, and they all simultaneously realized I was not kidding, and everybody cheered and ran out into the sunshine. So, with me and Professors Altshuler and Lefebvre now in tears, Silby said, see? It evens out. And I said, the hell it does. I graduated in 1979. How does a canceled final in 1986 even it out for me, fella? Joel Silby thought for a second, and then he said, well, I am buying you lunch. I've done all the damage I can do here. Thank you for listening. Countdown musical directors Brian Ray and John Philip Chanel arranged, produced, and performed most of our music. Mr. Ray was on guitars, bass, and drums, and Mr. Chanel handled orchestration and keyboards, and it was produced by TKO Brothers. Other music, including some of the Beethoven compositions, arranged and performed by No Horns Allowed. The sports music is the Olbermann theme from ESPN2, written by Mitch Warren Davis, courtesy of ESPN Inc. Where, Oh Where Are You Tonight was from Hee Haw in about 1970, and I sang that a cappella. Our satirical and pithy musical comments are by Nancy Faust, the best baseball stadium organist ever. Our announcer was my friend John Dean, and everything else was pretty much my fault, especially singing a cappella. So that's countdown for this, the 162nd day until the 2024 presidential election, the 1,239th day since dictator J. Trump's first attempted coup against the democratically elected government of the United States. Use the legal system, use the mental health system, use presidential immunity if it happens, use the not regularly given elector objection to stop him from doing it again while we still can. The next scheduled countdown is tomorrow, bulletins as the news warrants. Till then, I'm Keith Olbermann. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, and good luck.
Supernatural finances.